Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is school selection. School selection is its own distinct step in the process of applying for colleges, because if you skip this step, you have no idea where you're going to go, or where you're going to end up. So one major problem that I've encountered is that sometimes a lot of people come in with, I want a top school, the higher the better. If that's your only criteria, then why don't we just go down a list of 1 through 100 and just take your chances with what you can get into. That's a terrible approach, obviously, for a lot of reasons, and that's because sometimes people are so caught up in rankings that they don't take into consideration what a school really represents or what you'll get out of the school. So, for example, top 10, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, MIT. Those are very different schools, but for what reasons? I don't think a lot of people know. I'm not sure I know as well as I should, and that's something I have to admit to. However, when you do know which school fits you, or here's the thing. School selection is based on criteria. It's based on the student and what works for that student. Some people love huge colleges. Some people love a small, intimate environment. Some people enjoy a public setting, a private setting. That's something else. Some people like liberal arts. Some people like science. Some people like engineering. So here are some things you should consider in the school selection process. One is location. Can you live in New York? Do you prefer LA? Do you want to go to Washington? That's a unfair question to ask, because it shouldn't be that important, but it is important because weather is important. It can have a serious effect on you. However, educationally speaking, it's not really relevant to me. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt, but it is a factor. Okay, location, size is actually very important and underrated in terms of how important it is. For example, I went to UCLA, and I didn't take these factors into account. So size, UCLA is about 25,000 undergrad. When I went, I think about 40,000 total when you take into consideration graduate students, professors, faculty, staff, everything. So that's it's kind of like a small city, and that's huge in terms of student bodies. So some of the biggest, UT Texas Austin, Wisconsin Madison, even Berkeley, a lot of University of Michigan, a lot of state schools, a lot of big public schools are in that 20,000 plus range. So do you like that? Do you like those environments? The good side is that you have school spirit, usually, I think, if you have that many people, and there's something for everyone. There's a lot of clubs, a lot of events, a lot of majors, a lot of stuff. So the bigger it is, the more variety there is, hopefully. On the bad side is that I almost never knew my professors personally, and my professors rarely knew me, which was a hindrance in terms of the learning process. So I wasn't the type of student who would talk up in a class of 300, 400 people. So that was a really intimidating setting. So you would have to either, wait for the opportunity after class, make an appointment. So basically access to faculty is really difficult in a big public school. So that's a really important thing, especially if you want to go to graduate school, you need recommendation letters, or you just really want to do research. Okay, so the next thing is reputation. Reputation can cloud our ability to perceive what a good institution is. So what is a good institution? So there's a bunch of criteria, and US News, QS, and Forbes all have different methodology. So some factors include reputation, student to faculty ratio, school endowment, resources, lots of these factors. So quality of teaching, is that included? So you have to really think about what is important to you, and reputation is such a subjective thing. So you have to really consider that. Like Harvard has one of the best reputations, if not the best reputation, arguably. Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, in the world. Does that mean it's a great school? Yes, it does. But why? Everybody knows it is, but why? Nobody. I don't think a lot of people know why. And if you can answer that, that's a perfect answer for the why essay. So if I was to write something, I would be like, okay, you have this professor in this field who I really want to work with because I read his books, and I would do this with that research and apply it in this way. So that's specificity, and that's something you want in your personal statement. Next one is fields of study. So some schools are very specific. Like Carnegie Mellon has the #1 computer science program in the US, and its rank is number about 20. It's always in the 20s, which means that getting into Carnegie Mellon in the general sense is not that difficult. It's not that difficult relative to a top 5, but getting into a Carnegie Mellon computer science is like getting into Stanford. So, you know, that's difficulty. But in terms of the education you're gonna get, you're gonna have access to the best in the world, faculty best in the world. I'm not sure, but this is from research. And which brings me to a point. Nobody will know a school quite like a person at the school, who's been at the school, who's eaten, lived, slept, breathed at that school. So that's irreplaceable, honestly, no matter how much research you do. In Chinese, it's 讀萬本書不如行萬里路, which is you can read thousands of books, but that doesn't equate into real life experience. It's basically a translation of that. And yeah, so the best person to ask is someone who's been there, done that. Next is atmosphere, and the one after that is philosophy. I'll get through this a little more quickly. Atmosphere. Every school has a vibe. It's hard to define or hard to describe. So UCLA would be vibrant, active, sporty, nice. But almost every campus is pretty nice. It's involved. It's kind of cramped. No parking. A lot of people. Pretty dense. So just off the top of my head, service, medicine, for some reason. So those are the words that really pop into my head. Every school has those things, and you know how it feels. But it's hard there's a sea of information, and to get that signal is the important thing. Like, what is the real atmosphere in philosophy? So that transitions perfectly into the last thing is philosophy. What does that school believe in, and do you fit that school's beliefs? So you have some really liberal schools, such as I think Brown would qualify as a pretty liberal school, and you have some really tech schools like MIT and Caltech and Harvey Mudd, and also you have some Christian schools such as Pepperdine, LMU, Notre Dame. So the philosophies would naturally be very different, and this would be reflected in the student body as well as the curriculum, as the faculty, everything. An institution is a living, breathing organism. That sounds really cheesy, but what a school really is a collection, a group of people. Maybe sometimes in the hundreds, sometimes in the thousands, sometimes in the tens of thousands. So ultimately, though, it's just a group of people, and what those people represent is ultimately what the school represents, and that's why the school wants you to continue their legacy, or to have you contribute to what already exists. So what can you bring to the school? Who are you? And what can you do? So that's what schools want to know, and hopefully you can convey that through the personal statement. So good luck with that, and I'll come up with another video real soon.